And we began the Sicha of the Rebbe of Shabbos Parshas Nitzavim Vayeilech Chav Gimel Elul Tovshin Mem Tes, the last Shabbos of the year of 1989. And the theme is, when Rosh Hashanah coincides with Shabbos, the halacha, of course, is that we don't blow the shofar. And that was the main theme and the main discussion. Rosh Hashanah. Oh, Rabbi Jacobson. Just getting a Gemara. I wanted to see something. What? So the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the 4th chapter, teaches us that Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah that coincides with Shabbos, they blew shofar in the Beis HaMikdash. They did not blow shofar b'Medina. B'Medina means in the state, in the city, in the country. Rashi says they didn't blow in Yerushalayim, they didn't blow anywhere else in Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara says, what's the reason for this? So the Gemara goes through a different discussion, and then finally Rava says that Min HaTorah it's allowed, that the Rabbanon made a Gzeida. And it's the famous Gzeida de Rabbi. Rabbi explained the Gzeida. What was the Gzeida? That everybody is obligated to blow, but not everybody knows how to. So we're afraid that somebody may take the shofar on Shabbos and go to an expert in order to learn how to blow shofar, and in the process they may transfer it 4 amas, 4 cubits in a public domain as they're carrying the shofar. And because of this concern, the Rabbanan made a gzeida that you shouldn't blow shofar on Shabbos, so that way this won't happen, even with forgetfulness. If Rosh Hashanah is in the middle of the week, I don't mind if he carries the shofar. It's Yom Tov, you're allowed to. If Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbos, obviously the prohibition of carrying remains intact. And that's the same reason for Lulav, why they instituted that you shouldn't shake Lulav the first day of Sukkot that coincides on Shabbos, even though the Torah says you should shake Lulav. And it's the same reason for the Megillah. When Purim coincides with Shabbos, today it can't because of our calendar, but in those days, when it was based on the testimony of the new moon, Purim could be on Shabbos. So they didn't read the Megillah. Why not? There's a mitzvah, medivrei seifrim. So again, the Rabbanan said, not Purim, shechali is b'Shabbos. That's the Gemara. That's the basic sugyas. And this Sikha, the question was, after everything said and done, the bottom line is that blowing shofar on Rosh Hashanah is a fundamental aspect of Rosh Hashanah. It's coronating Hashem as a king. So how does Hashem become coronated without Kiyas shofar? So the famous answer is that Shabbos accomplishes what Rosh Hashanah usually accomplishes. In other words, what's usually accomplished through Tkiyas Shofar, which is arousing the pleasure in kingship, is achieved through Shabbos on its own. Still in the Beis HaMikdash they did blow. Why? Because in the accomplishment of Shofar, in arousing pleasure, in Melucha, Hashem's pleasure, there's a deeper layer and a deeper layer and a deeper layer, and what they could do in the Beis HaMikdash is more even than what Shabbos would accomplish anywhere else in the world. There's a story, I don't know exactly the first source of it, it's a story I saw that the Alter Rebbe, this is a maimer from the Alter Rebbe explains this in a maimer at length in Likutei Torah. They say a story that Alter Rebbe said, if he said it then or he said it that he used the humorous language. He said what's usually accomplished through Tkiyas Shofar and Rosh Hashanah, when Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbos, it's achieved through eating kugel. So one of the Chassidim said, so why do we blow shofar every year? Zolman essen kugel. Zolman essen kugel. Should eat kugel. So he said, Taka. Rosh Hashanah shechali is b'Shabbos. That's what we do. He says, Taka. That's what's done. When Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbos, that's what's done. It's eating kugel, it's eating the Alter Rebbe's kugel, but that's the nekuda. Here in this Sicha of Shabbos Nitzavim Tavshin Memtes, 1989, the last Shabbos of the year, the Rebbe asks a question. It's not just Rosh Hashanah is about Hashem's coronation. It's about who coronates him. It's that the human being coronates. That's why Rosh Hashanah is on Friday, the Friday of creation, the sixth day, not the day the world was created, because it's Adam's, the day not when creation happened, but the day Adam emerged in existence, and it's what he did, how he brought everything together. He brings the oneness and the harmony into existence. He's the one who coronates. And similarly, every Rosh Hashanah, Atem Kruyim Adam, every Adam Rishon included all souls, and every neshama has a part of the neshama of Adam. Every neshama has a chelik from Nishmas Adam Rishon, because every neshama was in the neshama of Adam. Simply, all of us are inheritors, are heirs to the genes of Adam and Chava, biologically and spiritually as well. Epigenetics begins with Adam and Chava. Right. That's why whatever happened to Adam and Chava didn't just affect them. It affected everybody, because we come from their genes. When they ate from the tree, Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, basically they consumed the plant of self-consciousness. That's what Eitz Hadas is. It redefined our genes. It redefined humanity. The same is true when you talk about Rosh Hashanah, what Adam did the first moment of the first day of creation. That's the idea of every Rosh Hashanah. But Rosh Hashanah, when it's Shabbos, that whole component is missing. It may happen through Shabbos, Mekacha v'Kaima, but not through Avodah. On this came the whole explanation of last year, that no, Rosh Hashanah Shechali is b'Shabbos is also Avodah, just a different type of Avodah. Not blowing shofar is an avodah. It's not passive. We sit on the couch, we don't blow shofar, we eat kugel. Not blowing shofar is an avodah. In a way, not blowing is much more powerful than blowing. So to blow or not to blow, that is the question. And the answer is, when Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbos, it's not that it diminishes the Rosh Hashanah. On the contrary, Shabbos increases the Rosh Hashanah. It increases it to the point that the avodah then is not through blowing, but through not blowing. And the main point was that there's two levels of bittul. The idea of Tkiyah Shofar is bittul. The idea of Shabbos is bittul, as explained. And there's two states of bittul. One is a state of bittul where there's an act of bittul, an act of alignment, which is in itself a very, very powerful experience. The person defining themselves as an Eved Hashem, Eved Melech. And the idea of Eved Melech is Melech. Like we learned from the Rashba that Mashakana Eved Kana Rabbi, what the Eved is Kaina, Lechatchila the Rabbi is Kaina. In other words, what the servant acquires, the master acquires, because the servant is, so to speak, an extension of the master. But this is an avodah of bittul. What does it mean it's an avodah of bittul? It's an avodah, it's work that a person ought to align themselves with their source, align themselves with reality. That's the avodah of bittul. To become an Eved, to become an Eved Melech. Then he said there's something even deeper. And that is that the oneness is so profound that there's no separate reality that's even experienced to say that you're bottle. The fact that we're saying bittul already means there's no bittul. Why? Because real bittul, real oneness, there's no bittul. There's nothing outside of the reality of oneness, of Hashem Echad, of Ein Od Milvado, bittul b'tachlos. As he says, Ein Metzias chutz me'amelech. Huh? I'll show you. As he said the example, when a person is standing in front of the king, it's not, I'm surrendering. There's a moment where you're like, there's no tension, there's no confrontation, there's no split, there's no dichotomy that has to be undone. And as he says, even the word Mesiras Nefesh can also have a limitation. Even though what's greater than Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh means there's a soul that you're surrendering. I'm surrendering my soul. There's something even deeper. You don't call it Mesiras Nefesh, because there's no soul that you're surrendering, that you're dedicating. It's complete oneness. And he said this is the difference between the names of the soul and the essence of the soul. The name of the soul, even the highest name, is Yechida, but that's only a name. Yechida is Yechida liyachtach. It creates unity. Its objective is liyachtach, to make unity, to be miyachid Hashem. In other words, there's a mitzvah, there's a reality, and you're trying to strip it from a superficial veneer and align it with truth. At the core of the soul, what's the reality? At the core of the soul, it doesn't even have the name of Yechida. It's bittul betachlis. It's complete oneness. He says this is the difference between Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Hashanah Shechali is b'Shabbos. Tkiyas shofar, blowing the shofar, is an act of his batlos. What's an act of his batlos? It's an act of coronation. It's an act of declaration. Ein lanu melech ela ata. Ki anu amecha v'ata avinu. We're your people, v'ata malkeinu, you're our king. That's what the Tzadi Gon says. Tkiyas shofar is Hachtara Samach, the coronation of the king. Like Adam Arishan, who said, Bayu nishtacheva v'nichra, nivrucha lefnei Hashem Eisenu. So there's Metzias, there's reality, there's identity, and then the person comes and blows shofar and introduces the reality of Bittul. What is the reality of Bittul? Alignment, to be fully aligned. In a person's life, what does that mean? In every person's life, it's the choice. I spoke last time. This is not. You can't just jump into it. You have to understand the process, because if not, you can't bypass the parts of yourself. If you bypass it, then it's not going to be real. It's going to come back to haunt you. Bittul, it has to be integrated and accumulative. The person has to know who they are, and then they can make choices. When I don't know who I am, I can't make a choice. I'm just guided by unconscious instincts and forces. And then things come out in a more destructive way, because like passive aggressive, When somebody says, I'm not angry, I'm not angry. I never get angry. Never happened in my life. So it just leaks, it comes out through the leak. It comes out. So how does it come out? It comes out in lethal ways. The person doesn't even know about it to have a choice. The more I can identify an emotion, even a negative emotion, the more I can choose what path I'm going to take in terms of thought, words, and actions. Right? Repression, if I repress everything, so then I can't make a choice, because what am I making a choice between what and what? I'm not acknowledging even that there's two roads. If there's two roads, if there's one highway, there's no way to make a choice, right? If you got to get to Manhattan, you're going through the George Washington Bridge. You don't have another 5 highways. So the moment there's nothing else but this highway, there's no choice. This is it. And if really there's something else going on in my life, so now it controls me instead of I'm controlling it. But when I could see, I'm feeling this. This is what's coming up. This is a part of me that's unevolved, or a part of me that still needs healing, whatever, or help, or a part of me that's hurt or wounded. Okay, now I could make a choice. Which highway am I going to take? Or in terms of neuroscience, which neural pathways, am I going to choose? What will be the trajectory for the next hour, for the next 20 minutes? So bittul is not just a little word. You mevatel yourself. What are you mevatel? Bittul comes with a lot of self-awareness. If there's no self-awareness, the bittul could be very superficial and very fake and very inauthentic. Bittul is that the self is in a state of alignment. For this, I have to have some awareness of the self. That's what das is. Va'adam yodes chava, right? It says in Tanya, das is kashrus. It's intimacy. Das is there's a self-awareness. There's a connection with self, and then you could make choices.
Okay, for the first people, what you're talking about alignment, so there is a choice to do it. But on the second one, there is no choice, right? How you can make a choice when you already you
right.
Give up yourself in a way.
The choice in the second one is before, yeah.
So
to open ourselves up to that.
What? There's no choice at the second level.
Right.
It's already you've gone.
Yeah, the choice in the second level is opening myself up to that rhythm, to that song, to that availability.
At that point, you have no choice.
You're right. When there's no mitzias, there's no mitzias. Yeah.
No blowing shofar is a higher bittul.
So he says, no blowing shofar is a higher bittul. Blowing shofar is an act of bittul. But when a person is not just mevatel himself, he's batel be'etzem. There's no mitzias that you're being mevatel. So then,
Rosh Hashanah is within him.
the Rosh Hashanah is within him. So it's not shayach, he should blow shofar and declare, let's coronate the king and let's align ourselves with the king and let's surrender to the king and let's become one with the king. There's nothing outside of it. You're completely one.
So if Beis Hamikdash is higher level,
We'll soon get to the Beis Hamikdash. Good question. It's not only the person is in a different state, also the act. In front of the king, even sign language is considered treason, the Gemara says in Chagiga. Sign language, even though you don't say a word. It's a story in Chagiga. There was a Roman emperor, he killed somebody because of sign language. Okay, so the Roman dictators were dictators and tyrants, but he's bringing out the Nekuda in Gemara that in real Malchus, even sign language is a compromise. In other words, in real intimacy, yeah, under a chuppah, haret mekodeshes li. Says, well, one second, I have a text. The shviga won't let the shidduch continue, right? And for good reason. Why? Well, what's wrong? I'm not allowed to check my phone. At a meeting, you're not allowed to check your phone. When he's standing in front of the melech, any tnua, even a tnua, which in other times is not only appropriate, but that's how we live. We do things, we move, we make gestures. But there's a state where that gesture is called mirida b'malchus. Why? Not because you're bad, but because in such a state, there's complete alignment, there's complete oneness. So he says the pu'ul of tkiyah shofar, the pu'ul of bittul is like machva b'machig. It's making signs. Blowing shofar is like making signs, and there's no mitzias outside of the melech. Like the person is in a state of awe, of oneness. So Rosh Hashanah Shechaliz b'Shabbos is also coronation. There's also avodah, but the avodah is not through blowing. The avodah is through not blowing, and not just not blowing, the inability even to blow because of the bittul b'tachlis. That's the summation of what we learned. It's a deep inyan. So in this last Shir Monday, I explained it more. So whoever wants could review it. Because there's a lot more details, but that was the Nukud. Now let's go weiter. No, never. Right here we see that bittul is not all or nothing. We just spoke about two states, but in each state there's so many different levels. One state of bittul is basically an act of bittul. In other words, there's something to overcome. I'm stripping it from the layers of ego or separateness and creating alignment. That's one act of bittul. And then there is a state of bittul where the bittul is so profound that there's nothing. Even the word bittul is wrong. The word bittul means you're mevatel something. What are you mevatel? What's there to be? Why do you have to be a mevatel? The chatchilat is oneness. Huh? All or nothing.
Two states of ego, but it's not a bittul.
Yeah. The ego likes to say it's all or nothing. The ego loves saying it's all or nothing. You know what I mean? It keeps you stuck in self-consciousness. Either you're real or you're fake. That the ego loves that. You'll see the next step is you go to sleep or you eat unhealthy food. Whenever it's all or nothing, either you go to sleep or you eat unhealthy food or you get into a fight with somebody. Because it's all or nothing. It's not all or nothing. One small step for man is a giant step for God. One is a process, the other one is the word goal, but even the word goal.
If you work out, like it's difficult, at some point, like it makes nothing for you because just you got there.
Right. It's a state, it's just a state of oneness. Yeah. It's a state of oneness. There's no self that's separate that I need to work with and be mavatal. Why are you nullifying? What are you nullifying? The fact, when you say, nullify the self, oh, that's already Mesidus Nefesh. Mesidus Nefesh, beautiful, but on this level, not Mesidus Nefesh. I'm Mesidus Nefesh. Huh? Vav, Siv Vav. It's page 707. V'yesh leimar, shebeizo ifanim amurim ba'bitl. Pa'ulas ha'is batlus ha'bitl be'etzem kshurim im beizo ifanim begilu yo'er eliki. What makes the difference between these two? One day I wake up like this and one day I wake up like this? It's not. It has to do with two different stages in the revelation of oneness. I'm going to say something very powerful. It's not, could you just skip from 1 to 2? You have to respect and always have integrity where the person is. It all depends what gilui of elikus there is. What does this mean? Mitzad ha'oir eliki shemislabish ba'olam la'avaisu l'chyesu l'kaimai yeshna mitzias ha'olam va'adam elashadam mevatelas atzmei v'esa ha'olam l'gabe oir eliki shemechayim hava mekayim ha'aseh ava mitzad ha'oir eliki shelemayla me'ha'olam ein mitzias u'lasiyas barach bittel ha'mitzias l'gamrei. It has to do with the interpretation of reality. What is reality? When I get so philosophical so early in the morning. What is reality? What is reality? Right? That's a complicated question.
Physical reality or absolute reality?
Everything. Any reality we talk about. Everybody understands this is a table, right? On one level it's a table. It's emes lamita. I'm not lying when I say it's a table. But everybody understands if you have a microscope, you see a different layer of the table. If you look at the table from its molecular structure, it's a whole different reality.
Doesn't make it less stable.
Huh?
Doesn't make it less stable.
And if you take a look at, if you could see every atom that makes it up, right? The whole idea that this is solid, it assumes so much more significance. And the same is true deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Everything is relative. You're right. The way my eye detects reality, this is real be'emes. And it's not a mistake. This is the world God created. Our eyes and our brains interpret reality. This is the reality. But we have to be sensitive to the fact that there's other layers, and if our eyes were microscopic, we would see a different world. The same is true in a person himself. Who am I? Judging myself, looking at myself with the prism, with the lenses, with the glasses of the brain that I have presently. So this is how I define myself. If I'm given other antennas to be able to pass through and to transcend certain barriers within my brain, I would be able to see much deeper layers of the self. That's a person's own journey, people's journeys to parts of themselves that they never even knew existed, both positive and challenging, toxic ones. You see a darkness you never knew existed, and you see a light you never knew existed. It's not that it wasn't there before. Just in my awareness, the eyes that were functioning, I didn't have that ability to detect this level of reality because of the blockages that blocked certain reality. And some of these blockages are essential for survival. Right? Your typhus, we speak about this a lot. Generally speaking, he says these are the two things. There's the way divine energy, Hashem's light, comes to, it's enclosed in the world to create it and give it existence. What it's saying is, I want reality. I'm creating reality. I'm creating reality. Reality has credence. This is the way the divine energy is condensed and filtered to assume a veneer of finiteness. So there's a bear and there's a lion, there's stars and there's galaxies, there's a human being and there's a tree. And everything is unique and everything has its own individual chemistry based on the energy that is condensed in order to be able to create it and make it exist. What is bittul on that level? Bittul on that level is an act of bittul. In other words, aligning the outer with the inner. Connecting the physical or the spiritual reality with its divine source, with its divine oneness. That's the first level. When a deeper level of elikus comes out, he says, what's the infinite light that's not condensed within the finite. When that emerges, what is the definition of reality? Pure infinity. Let's say there would not be a tzimtzum. Let's say there would not be Bereshis bara l'kim hashamayim v'saretz. What would there could be a whole world. The world that was there before. But what does it look like? It's pure infinity. That's its interpretation. It's just a manifestation of infinity. Because the light was condensed and filtered and limited, therefore there's a new interpretation for reality. It has a name. It has an identity. Here the avodah is bittul. But when the bli gvul, when the infinity comes out, there's no avodah of bittul. It's a chatchila einod malvada. It's a chatchila oneness. So in a person himself or herself, there's two states. There's a state in which I'm living in the vision of reality, in which there is separateness, in which there is finiteness. And here bittul means to choose alignment over separation, to choose oneness over fragmentation. And then there's another place where you were never separate. You are infinity. You are Ein Sof. Ein Oid Milvadei Mamish. You get a vision of that existence. There's nothing to be mevatel. There's nothing separate they have to be mevatel. In my mind, there was something separate that have to be mevatel. Huh? Yeah.
There's no objection to him having to skip that bit because he wasn't aware.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You understand what he's saying, the difference? V'zeh gam ha'chilek shemiyamei sachel yemei shabbes. B'maisachel ha'ira l'kiu b'ofen shel tzimtzum v'yirid l'mata l'havis l'achis kol prat en avram d'sheishes me b'reishes k'mayim ha'machadish b'tuvi b'chol yom tabin masa b'reishes hainu sh'olam u yeshu mitziyas v'tzarech levatloi Mashenkin b'yom ha'shabbos v'yichal l'kim v'yishbes m'kom alachta asher asa az eines aloyra l'kiv v'nichlal b'mekoirei v'olam es olam l'sharshim v'mekoirem olam es b'ri yitzid asiyum mis alam loylam atzilus Shaboy Merum is Galab Chinas Achach Mashinyan Tachlos Abitul, Shahula Vada Yehuvein Zelasa. Val Pisa Yeshleimar Shaberesh Shana Shachal Bimesa Shavu Abitul Begaloy, Hula Dargas Alakus Shaberach Limitzi Salem, Lahava Salem, Valim Lachalav. Valachen Gama Bitloy de Pula Vasiat Kia Shefer Beferchin Gashas Mitziusa. Mashenka Beresh Shana Shachal Beshabas Habitul Gam Begaloy. Hula dargas alakus she'ena berach lo'elam. Shalagabe dargas ula yeshna mitziyas olam. V'lachen gam ha'bitl ba'ofen shal hedir ha'pula v'asiyah she'en tekin b'shevi bitl b'tachlos. V'yeshleimer she'keinu gam b'niyel amshachas v'gilim alchus yizbar she'pelam al dea bitl in yenach tora she'amshachas b'resh ha'shana shechol b'shambas al dea bitl b'tachlos she'mizbate b'zeh she'en tekin b'shevi he nailis yosim amshachas al dea pula d'kir she'b'resh ha'shana shechol b'meis ha'shavua. What's he saying? What's the difference between the weekdays and Shabbos? We say on Shabbos, Hashem rested. What does that mean, he rested? He wasn't so exhausted to have to go on vacation. The idea is as follows. Weekdays represents the act of creation. What is creation? The Magid and Alter Rebbe Taich S from the word oisius. What happened by creation? He created the letters of heaven and the letters of earth, not heaven and earth. He didn't have to create. Everything is in God, heaven and earth too. The letters of heaven, Es Hashem. What do you mean letters of heaven? The ability to describe heaven as an entity. And the ability to experience heaven and earth as an entity. In other words, he allowed infinity to be condensed in a prism, to allow infinite light and the electromagnetic field to be able to go through frequencies that would be able to be detected through finite tools and defined as finite realities. And now, my job as the human being is to be the conductor of the symphony and say, this is a symphony. This is not random mutations. This is not a mistake. This is a symphony. This is all a manifestation of divine oneness. That's what bittul means. Not to separate, not to make pirud, to bring it back together. That's the weekdays. Shabbos, he rests. What does it mean he rests? What does it mean he rests? When a person rests, you go back to yourself, right? You reclaim your kaiches. What does that mean spiritually? What does Hashem reclaim? The finite energy, so to speak, that was condensed comes back to the source. So what does it look like now? Infinite. So what happens to the world? Vayeilech Welt. The fish is not the same fish on Shabbos. The sky is not the same sky on Shabbos. The person is not the same person on Shabbos. What do you mean you are? No, now you're infinite. That's Shabbos Aliyah Sa'ilamas. The worlds are elevated. When the worlds are elevated. Now obviously, the more refined one's eyes are and one's antennas are, the more they experience that. But that's what it means. Shabbos, the world goes back to its source. It means it goes back to its source. It goes out of Oisius. From Dibur it becomes Machshava. Hashem doesn't speak the world. He thinks the world. What's the difference in speech and thought? When you speak, the words come out of you. They're concretized. What does that mean spiritually? God speaks the world. It means that the energy can be seen as something outside. I could talk about a heaven, I could talk about an earth, I could talk about me, I could talk about you. On Shabbos, all the doors of perception are cleansed. The energy is reclaimed by the source. Shavas mikol malachnoi. So everything appears as is. Pure infinity. Shabbos, that's the reality of Shabbos. That's the reality of Shabbos. That's the energy of Shabbos. Obviously, based on a person's refinement, they'll feel more, they'll experience more. There's an expression in Talmud Yerushalmi, Rabbi Yoina brings it. Bekushi hitiru l'daber divrei Torah b'Shabbos. Chazal had a difficulty, only with difficulty did they allow people to say divrei Torah on Shabbos. Imagine the whole Dvar Torah industry by your Shabbos table is something that it's questionable. Not because they want you should speak politics. They didn't want you should speak. They didn't want you should speak. So Alter Rebbe says in Torah, he says, what are you supposed to do against Shabbos? He says, Negina, sing. That's what he writes. They realized that you, without a Pesireden, so fine, so at least speak Divrei Torah, Hakrish Kenshainik, V'daber Dover. But what's the nekuda? Dibur is concretizing things. Silence, you don't concretize things. You allow things to be in their original form. Words need sentences. Word needs structure. That's the beauty of talking, and that's the curse of talking. What's the beauty of talking? You say, wow, this was a speech, this is an article. It defined it beautifully. But it's all about definition. Sentences, words, paragraphs, chapters, books. That's what a beautiful book is. Says that's what God's book. Asara Mamaris Nevil. Look at his speech. It's a beautiful speech. How the DNA works, the double helix, the chromosomes, the cells, the atoms, the molecules. Gewaldic. It's a beautiful speech. But it's also a problem speech. Why? Everything is defined. Everything is defined. An atom is an atom, and a molecule is a molecule, and I'm I, and you're you. So now there's the avodah of bittul. That's the weekdays. Shabbos Shabbos, it's the same world. The world is not destroyed on Shabbos. When you speak about Ein Sof, it doesn't mean there's no world. When we speak about the second level of bittul, it means, what's the definition? The definition is that it's an expression of infinity. It's an expression of oneness. So when all the layers get stripped away, and you could see reality in its original source, what is the whole world? The world doesn't need bittul. The world doesn't need bittul. It's lechatchila, nothing outside of infinity. There's ein metzias. What do you say? Bittul b'metzias. The herst. So it's not mesidus nefesh, which means I have a nefesh, I have an ego, I have an identity, and I'm giving it away. Gevaldik, moidedik. That's not the ultimate vision. The ultimate vision is you're not giving anything away. There was no separation. It's based on the idea that you were separate. You have to give away. You have to come back. You weren't lost to be returned. When that state comes out, there was no separation. The first bittul is only achana for the second bittul. Only a preparation. You're right. It's a state. You're right. It's a state of bittul. You're not mevatel yourself. You're right. You're not mevatel yourself. You're batel be'etzem. You're right. It could look passive. It seems passive. That's why we don't blow shofar. Not blowing shofar is not passive. It's much deeper than blowing shofar. Silence communicates much more than words. But like they say, just because if you know what you're silent about, yeah. Very good. Yeah. Just because, they say a chacham schweigt, right? Shagla chacham stika. A wise person is quiet. Doesn't mean every person who's quiet is wise. Sometimes a person is quiet. Is quiet. No, not blowing shofar doesn't necessarily mean this bittul. The not blowing shofar Rosh Hashanah Shechali is b'Shabbos. That's the savoid. So Rosh Hashanah, middle of the week, the revealed state of bittul is to the elikus that's be'erech to the world. What does it mean be'erech to the world? The way elikus is condensed to become the source and the battery and the engine of the universe. So you coronate Hashem on this world. You say this world is not a hefgewelt. It's not a place of anarchy. It's not a place of meaninglessness. There's a king, Melech HaOlam. Let's coronate him. That's what the shofar is. In a person's life, what does that mean? It means you're Megala Hashem's Malchus in the world. You're Megala, the true oneness. Let's not underestimate the first level of bittul. But Shoshana Shechali is b'Shabbos. The bittul is to that state of elikus where there's no world. Not because there's no world, because it's all part of Ein Sof. So what's the bittul? The bittul is not through an action. The bittul is an inner state of letting go. Letting the reality emerge the way it is.
You mean you're still coronating Hashem, but within yourself. Right?
Yeah. So the coronation and what's accessed is also a much deeper level. Which now brings us to the big question. Zion. Omnam al pizat tzarich lavin zet shebemikdash taking on beyond Rosh Hashanah Chali b'Shabbos. Harei b'mayim the matzav shel bittul hametzias ein mi sheyiska b'shofar. Vatkiya b'shofar mechicha l'chayda sheyesh metzias adam shemevatel es atzmei chuli v'loi bittul hametzias legamri. Here's the big question. If this is the case, how is it that Dafka in the Beis HaMikdash, which is a more sacred space, they did blow on Yom Tif of Rosh Hashanah, which was Shabbos? If this is all true, Mela, the way you learn it Stam, you say outside of the Beis HaMikdash, Chazal were afraid of people being Mechalel Shabbos, so they took it away. In the Beis HaMikdash, ain't Shvuz BeMikdash, they weren't afraid of these things, especially that you're not carrying, you're in the Beis HaMikdash. And Beis HaMikdash you were allowed to carry. It was a Rishus HaYachid. So it's not an issue. That's Bepashtas. But according to what we explained, they're not blowing shofar is a deeper state of reality, a deeper state of bittul. If this is the case, so there's nobody to blow. It's not from why they blowing there. There's nobody to blow. If this is the state of bittul, there's nobody, right? Bittul means there's somebody being mevatel themselves. There's no self, there's nobody being mevatel, so who's blowing? The fact that you're blowing means there's a metzias. I am blowing shofar. That's the state of coronation on Rosh Hashanah. So it comes out that the Beis HaMikdash is much lower than everywhere else. You could say that the explanation is as follows. And here we come to the next stage. After the second level of bittul, there's something even deeper. Third level. Not really a level, but the third inyan. Gam shlilas hametzias shayeches legeder hametzias. I don't know how to translate that. Even negating reality means you're still stuck in that reality. And that's why you need to negate it. Whenever you negate something, it means you're defined by it somewhat, even though you're not being defined by it. The fact that you have to say and experience you're not being defined by it means that there's a deep connection. Mashenkin be'inyan. Somebody once told me that his son said to him, he was telling his son, you have to think out of the box. He says, no. There's no box. I don't want to think out of the box. There's no box. Right? Thinking out of the box, there's a box, and I'm going to think out of the box. So I'm defined by the box. I'm fighting the box. Something that's not shaykh to metzias, if it's not shaykh to the geder, to the realm of metzias, so it doesn't negate metzias. There's an expression similar. This idea is similar to what Alter Rebbe says in Tanya Shari Yichud V'Amunah chapter 9. Ka'omer al eze chachme rama v'amuka shehi efshel l'masha shabiyadayim shekol hashemei yitzchak loy lefi shechush hamishish enem esyachas v'neifel ela al siya gashmis and etveses biyadayim. Somebody says, this idea, this sheer, this chachma, this branch of wisdom is so deep. It's exalted and deep. They say, really? How deep is it? How deep is it? I can't reach it with my hands. So Alter Rebbe says, Kol Hashemei Yitzchak. Everybody starts laughing. Why? He said something very good. He said, I can't reach it with my hands. Even when I get down, my hands don't reach it. It's too deep. Right? Something fell into a cistern, and something fell down a hole, and you're bending down, and your hands can't reach it because it fell down so low. Or it's way up there, right? The ball went into the roof and your hands can't reach it. So that's what he's saying. The chachma is so exalted or so deep. I can't touch it with my hands. I can't. So it's laughable. Why is it laughable? What's wrong? He didn't say he could touch it. If he said he could touch it with his hands, I understand why it's laughable. You don't touch wisdom with your hands. But he didn't say he could. He says it's so deep that he can't. The Alter Rebbe says it's still laughable. Why is it laughable? Because the negation of it means that you don't understand what it is. The world of chush hamishush, of physical touch, relates to something physical that you can grasp with your hands. So this I can touch, this I can't touch. Fire I can't touch. Why? It's going to hurt me. It's very cold water. It's too cold for me. It's too hot for me. It's too high. It's too low. So I can't reach it. I can't touch it. It's too sticky. Whatever it is. It's in Yanim that are nitfas and chush hamishush. This is very tall. This is a tall building, so I can't touch the top of it. This is deep down under the earth, so I can't reach it. But it's all in Yanim that mishush relates to. So either in the positive or in the negative. When you say a chacham is very deep, that I can't touch it with my hands, it's laughable because the whole definition doesn't apply. It's not that realm. Even a superficial chachma you don't touch with your hand. It's not something that fits into that realm. So the Alter Rebbe is saying like this: when you're negating something, it means they're in the same box, they're in the same realm, they're in the same gedder, and therefore you say, this I can touch, this I can't touch. Some things you need a different vocabulary. Here's the issue. Now it becomes this we all understand. We could understand this. You say somebody will say, I have dark secrets. I have dark secrets in myself. Oh, I'll bring a flashlight. No. The light of your flashlight. We need a stronger flashlight. I'm laughing. Why am I laughing? Well, what's wrong? You got a flashlight. You said it's dark. I once heard from Rabbi Khan that in Dvinsk was a city in Latvia. There were two Rabbonim, crown jewels of the Jewish people. The Rav of the Ashkenazim was Reb Meir Simcha Kohen, the Ur Sameach, the Meshech Chachma. Reb Meir Simcha Kohen of Dvinsk. From the Goini Hadar, passed away in the 1920s. He wrote Ur Sameach on the Rambam, Meshech Chachma on Chumash, on Torah. The Rav of the Chassidim was the Rogatchover, Rabbeinu Yosef Rosen. The Rogatchover was a short person and he was frail. He was like small. The Meir Simcha was much more, robust. They were both Go'inei Olam. So there was once an argument in Shul. You know how Jews argue. Wer is Gresser? Who's bigger? The Rogatchover, this one was saying, how do you compare? The Rogatchover was a different league, a different realm, a different getting. No, the Meir Simcha is greater. So Biel said there was a little kid there, and he was laughing. So they didn't know. So they said, "Was lachst du?" He said, 2 hours, you idiots, you Mishoitim, are arguing, wer is Gresser? He says, alle weisen, as it Meir Simcha is a sach Gresser with the Rogatchover. Everybody knows who's bigger. What are you? So they told him, no, we don't mean bigger physically. We mean bigger in a different way. We mean spiritually, intellectually. He says, nah, now you're doing pshetlach with me. Now you're hacking a chaynik. You said Gresser is Gresser. Gresser is Gresser. What was Tamek Pshetlach Gresser this way, that way, that way? There's darkness in your soul. Here's a flashlight. Here, your phone has a light. Let's put on the light. No, it's not strong enough. Okay, let's light a big fire. We'll bring headlights of a truck. What's the problem? The problem is it's not. The lights are not strong enough. The whole inyan, you need a different vocabulary. You don't touch chachma with hands, and you don't see secrets through a flashlight. You need a different frequency of light, and it's not even the light that we call light. In other words, the physical light that comes from the sun is not going to help with dark secrets. It's a different type of light. It's called love, it's called empathy, it's called understanding. It's a different level. Now, let's go much deeper than this. This everybody understands because that's how the world functions. But the Rebbe Tainas, on the highest levels of reality, if you're negating something, if you're saying it's not this, and through this you can't have it, you already brought it down to that. By saying this light is not strong enough for this, it means it's in the realm, and therefore you're saying it's not strong enough. The chachma is something physical, but it's too deep, so I can't reach it. Whenever you negate something from something else, it means you reduced it to that realm. The question is if it's too distant, if it's too far. So he says like this. When you talk about bittul, and you say, there's no mitzias to be mevatel, that's not bittul. The second level of bittul, you're still stuck. You know how I know you're stuck? Because you're negating reality. You're negating mitzias. You tell me there's no soul to do Mesiris Nefesh. There's no self to be mevatel. That means you're in the realm. You're in that realm. So that's already a definition. When oneness is negating the reality that's outside of oneness, you're already describing oneness that's in the realm of Metzius, and therefore you have to say no to it. He'll explain more. Al derech ze benidden de dan. Shegam ze shabam de lefnei melech eine mede mesyadi lasas muma fil lo yishtachvois lemelech hainu shlilas metzius harez upne sheshayach adayin legeder hametzius im ki ba'ofen shel shlilas hametzius masheiken ksheine shayach legeder shel metzius klal gam lo shlilas abitel hametzius v'chol inyane hu hamelech atzmei azay ksherotzen hamelech hu shatia eze asiya bevade shelo yisakev afilu l'rega lasas hadavar. אפילו לרגע אחד. כיוון שאין חושב כלל על עצמי גם לא על שלולס מציוסה. וכל עניינו הוא שרצון המלך נשלם על ידה. ועל מובן שבדרגה זו עשייה שלי באופן שנעשה ממילא על דרך מנפשי קרא, ויסדר מזה שאפילו אין מרגיש מנפשי קרא. Let me finish the sif and I'll explain. Valpiza move mashav mikdash you taken gam bereshon shechol b'shabbes. Kol zman sheyesh negeder shel metzius shelilas hametzius lo yichayla liyas hapula d'tkiya shayfer ki kol avoda pula gam avoda supulas habitel hi bestira lahabitel metzius legamni. Aval b'makim v'darga shel amayla megeder shel metzius klal at shel shayach afilu shelilas hametzius. Ein hechrich b'matzav shel heder ha'pu'ula davka shlilas hametzius. Ela yachali is gam matzav shel pu'ula v'asiya. Ve'ein ze bestira lebitel. Labitel. Kivin she'ein ze bitel shel shlilas hametzius. Ki im lamayla migeder shel metzius klal. Liyoyse chad mamash im HaKadosh Baruch Yisrael v'kodesh b'richu kol echad. U'meila kivin she'tkiyaz b'shayfer b'reshana hi mitzvah b'teira. Nazis pu'ula zulay b'efen she'yeshna metzius shel adam she'tekeya b'shayfer. Ela b'efen de minav shekara. V'at she'nei margish afilu she'minav shekara. Kim she'pula d'tkiya shayfer nazis me'ela. It's hard to find the right oisius, the right words to explain this. Huh? It's pretty clear, though. It's pretty clear. It's very deep, but it's pretty clear.
Imagine we never found the words in one or two paragraphs.
Even the second level of bittul, he says. You say, in front of the king, you can't pick up your hands. You can't blow shofar. You're in awe. You lose yourself. You melt. There's no I'm being mevatel myself. It's like sometimes you come in front of a certain reality and you're awestruck. You're mesmerized. That's what he said. The second level of bittul. There's no tension anymore. You're like not there. You dissolve. Your ego dissolves. Death of ego. Death of ego. He says the fact that the ego needs to die means that it's something, I'm going to use the word, that's threatened by ego. It's something that's defined by no ego. So therefore we say that no self can be present. Because this negates every self. The fact that you have to say that it negates something means that it's still subtly defined by it. Even though you're saying it negates it, it transcends it. The self has no place there. The fact that you say, you know what this is? This is a place where the self has no place. If that's its definition, it already means it's a more limited definition. If that's how you're defining it, this is a chachma that I can't touch with my hands. It means you're not dealing with the real chachma. When we go out of Metzius completely, all the language of bittul that we're talking about, he says, is still the language of Metzius. It's still the language of separateness. The question is, how? Is it that I'm separate, that I'm working on it? Is it that my separateness dissolves? But it's dissolving. When there is true oneness with the true source, he says, then, when you're not in the realm of Metzius, not even negating Metzius, so then if the Melech wants there should be an action, so then you don't even tarry for a moment, and you do it. What happened with bittul? It's not a stira to bittul. It's not a stira to bittul. Why is it not a stira to bittul? Because you're not even thinking about negating your metzias. Even that is not part of the machshava. There's only the melech.
So why do you need shofar then?
So this is the expression of the Gemara, minafshe kara. The Gemara says by moedim, says there was a certain Amoidi, he said, when I come to moedim, minafshe kara. I bow down on my own. He says, what does it mean, minafshe kara? You're a conduit for Hashem. It's not even feeling that I'm doing it on my own. So he says like this, as long as we're in the realm of metzias, what do we mean metzias? Some type of reality outside of pure infinity. So then you can't do tkiyah shofar, because any action, even the action of bittul, is a contradiction to real bittul with metzias. And therefore you need passivity. But in a place that's completely beyond any metzias outside of Ein Sof, over there you don't have to negate metzias. Over there you could be fully present in any space, including in the space of action, and it's not a stira to bittul. Why is it not a stira to bittul? Because you could not blow, but blowing is not a contradiction to not blowing. Because it's not a bittul in which you're negating reality. It's completely beyond mitzvah. Let me ask you a question. Could Hashem blow shofar? You know, Yitaka doesn't say who's going to blow. It says, "Se wird sich blosen." In the Beis Hamikdash, hat sich geblosen shofar. I'm blowing shofar. I'm not blowing shofar. I'm not blowing shofar is already connected to I'm blowing shofar. Yeah. I'm not blowing shofar. There's no me. There's no me, right? The darkness is so deep that the flashlight can't reach it. There's no me. I'm so beyond metzias that me doesn't work there. Whoa. You're already in a place of negation. In real oneness, you could be fully present. You see, they didn't reach that. You go on a mountaintop, you meditate, 60 years, you dissolve in silence. It's a gewaldig, it's a moedidik silence. No ego. The words no ego means you're attached to an ego. The moment they say, you know, when you tell somebody you're friends with, I'm not friends with them. What's that mean? I'm not friends with them. There's a tension. I'm talking not friend, but there's a tension, right? You would think we're friends. You're putting me into that category. I'm negating it. So he says, even the second level of bittul, where you're not busy negating the world. You're not negating the world because the self is lost. But how is the bittul defined? It's in a Stockenwelt. There's no person, there's no nefesh. That's how it's defined. How can it be? There's oneness. So that means that you can experience it only through transcendence of self. Transcendence of self. It says that's still metzias. It's metzias that's defined by negating metzias. This has to do with the fact that we're still busy defining God. And this we have to understand now. This will clarify it. We spoke about weekdays, we spoke about shabbes, and now we speak about the Beis Hamikdash and Hashanah Chaliz b'Shabbos. When you speak about Hashem and reality, we could speak about it from the perspective of Mamala Kol Almin, Soivav Kol Almin, and Atzmos. They're all true. They're all true based on where you are in reality. You don't bypass. But one has to be sensitive to that. There's a world, a reality in which there's metzias. There's some form of ego, or at least potential for ego. There you need bittul. You need the avodah of bittul. Strip the ego and align it with the source. Ego is easing God out. In other words, Hashem condenses himself to create something called me. I exist. My body exists. It has a function, it has a chemistry. My brain has self-consciousness. That's real. That's real. It's called Mamala Kol Almin. There's Shabbos. What's Shabbos? Shabbos is transcendence. Now you can't work. You're not allowed to work. Why? in the infinite, in the presence of the king, silence, silence, death of ego, death of ego, ego death. What was Nizgala? What was Nizgala is the Ein Sof of reality. The Ein Sof of reality, there's no separateness. And there's no self to nullify. How do we talk about Soivav? We always say the same thing. It's beyond the world. It's infinite. What does infinite mean? It's not finite. It's limitless. What does limitless mean? It's not limited. That's a problem. So what should I do? You're right, I shouldn't do anything. Limitless is a problem. Why? It's again back to negation. The chachma is so deep, the reality is so deep that limits can't grasp it. Really? No, you're in the realm of limit. We're still thinking about it in terms of the realm of limit. But it's unlimited. It's unlimited. We're still using this, we're stuck in that vocabulary. So in that vocabulary you have bittul. That's gewaldig. That's what he's going to say now. V'inyin zat kiyah b'shev b'ktush b'rishon d'chal b'shabbat zat bittul shalamayla megeder shal metzias kal gam lo shlulus ha-metzias nasai de gilui oir eliki shalamayla megeder ha-metzias legamri gam lo boifon shal shlulus ha-metzias shlulus ha-chiyu v'shlulus ha-shlila. This is another revelation of Elikus, beyond the gather of Metzias. Metzias means reality, existence. Not even negating Metzias. Shlilas HaChiyuv, just like you negate positive definition, you also negate negative definition. The Rambam says we can't define God in positive terms. He's not finite to define him that way. So how do we define him? Through saying you're not this, you're not this, you're not this. The Rambam says, don't say Hashem is a chacham. Say he's not a chacham. I can't say a positive term. That's called shlilas hachiyuv. Negate any affirmative definition. So we think, oh, now we got it. It's not this. So he says you have to go to the next step. Shlilas hashlila. You have to also negate negation. Because when you say he's not this, it's also a definition. It's a much more exalted definition. But you're still defining it by saying it's not defined by this. So I'm defining it. It's much more abstract. But the moment you say, I say, I'm not defined by this, it's because there's some form of connection, even if it's a very subtle connection. When you're really, really not defined by it, you don't say you're not defined by it. Let's put it even in very simple psychological language. When you have to avoid certain places, it's because those places are threatening. Right? Certain people I can't be. Why? Because it triggers me. I'm limited. I'm defined by it. So I have to stay away. I have to stay away in order to be safe. I'm staying away. But why am I staying away? I'm staying away because somehow you define me. If you're really, really, really in a free state, you don't have to stay away. You don't have to negate it. Negating means that there's some connection. So the fact that there's shlila of chiyuv, you're shoylel Hashem from Metzias, which is true. He's Ein Sof, he's not Metzias. Metzias means defined reality. He's a non-existential state of existence. The fact that you say he's a non-existential state of existence, the Rebbe says, that's already... that's a product of creation. It's creation talking about infinity. It's we describing bittul. When we describe bittul, we say silence, passivity, you dissolve. Of course you dissolve. How could you be there? He says, in real reality, of course you could be there. Why can't you be there? Why did you decide that you're a contradiction?
No need to hide.
There's no need to hide anything. Hashem is allowed to blow shofar. He's also not allowed to blow shofar. In the Beis Hamikdash, you don't need that lack of Tkiyah Shofar. There could be an Asiyah. What happened to Bittul? You said in Bittul there's absolute silence. Because it's not a Bittul that negates reality. It's not a Bittul that has to negate any activity, any action, any involvement, any presence of the human faculties. When there's complete oneness, be'emes oneness. Yisrael v'kutchabricha kol echad. Tkiyah Shofar is a mitzvah. That's what Hashem wants. So it's not I'm blowing shofar. Se blost sich. Minafshei kara. It's like my eye is a conduit for the divine blowing of the shofar. It's like minafshei kara. Minafshei kara means he's doing moedim on his own. And he says, and it's not even that he feels minafshei kara. It's not like, oh, I'm now in a place of minafshei kara.
So by definition, there is no contradiction in that place.
There's no contradiction. So everything can be present. Nothing has to be amputated. You don't have to say, oh, Metzias? No, sorry, no Metzias. That's when God is infinite. Infinity is a definition. It's an amazing definition. What's its definition? It's not finite. There's no ego. Not finite. So there's the first level of bittul is, we're in a world of finiteness. Hashem conceals himself. He condenses himself. He creates reality. He creates oisius. So bittul over there is alignment, connection. You always have to choose connection over detachment. I can detach from my spouse. I can detach from my kids. I can detach from my soul. I can detach from the world. I can detach from God. Bittul means don't run away. Not bad, not bad. We could stop here. It's also good avodah. If you master that avodah, it's ganz good. It's a choice of tkiyah shofar to say we're in a relationship. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not going to go into isolation. The world has oneness. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That's the first madrega of bittul. There's a second madrega of bittul. You don't have to do an act of bittul. Why? There's nothing to be mavatal. Why? Because in the shabbes vision of reality, there was no tzimtzum. No tzimtzum is ain't safe. So why are you being mavatal your metzias? It means you're struggling with metzias. The metzias is gone. It dissolves. Like when you're in front of the melech. You're not busy being mavatal yourself. You're just lost in the process. You are lost. There's no you. There's not even a nefesh to be ma'aseh because there's no nefesh. There's no separateness. Ein noid muvada. L'chayre, that's the greatest thing, and that's expressed in not blowing shofar. You're not doing an act of bittul because you're not even here to do an act of bittul, so to speak, and you don't even do an act. It's pure silence. It's dveikus. It's dveikus. So the question is in the Beis Hamikdash, why are they blowing? So it says there's a deeper inyan in bittul. And that is, it's not even called bittul. It could be mitzias too. Bittul means no mitzias. Nothing outside of infinity. Why not? Why not? You say, because there's oneness. So there's oneness that negates separateness. That oneness is not a true oneness.
So it's a double negation.
It's a double negation. Two negatives.
The two negatives is actually the definition of you itself. So that's the
two negative what?
Negative negates itself. So
yeah.
It's like two negatives is like positive.
Yeah, two negatives make a positive. It's not.
It's you, not you, not you. Means it's actually you.
Yeah.
That's the reason.
Yeah. There's you. There's not you. And then there's not you. So that's go back to you. But it's a different you. It's a different you. There's you. That's blowing shofar. There's not you. Really not you. Not that I'm trying to be not. There's not you. To be or to be not. To be or not to be. To be or to be not. There's being not. But that's being not. You're trying too hard. You're trying too hard to be not. So there's you, then there's not you. That's Shabbos. Shabbos is the silence. V'da b'davar, no malacha, no tkiyah shofar on Shabbos. Why? Not because there's no coronation. It's a whole deeper state of coronation, of bittul be'etzem, not you. But then, in the Beis Hamikdash was not you. Even the not you is a limited, I'm using the word limited because I don't have other words because I'm trying to talk. But I don't mean limited. But it's already a form of definition, even if it's the most abstract and transcendent definition. The Alter Rebbe has a lashon look at the Torah. You know what the problem with Sovev Kol Almin is? That you put in the words Almin. It transcends the world. Why does it transcend the world? You hear what he says? The problem, Amalek Kol Almin fills the world. It's limited. It's defined by the world. Sovev Kol Almin, it transcends the world. Well, excuse me, why do you have to say that? Why do you have to say that? So he says that means you're still stuck in your world and you're busy saying it's transcendent. This is above the death of the ego, not you.
No,
That's the paradigm.
Definition of definition.
Exactly.
Almond. So
That's the highest definition. I'm in the world of Alman. From the world of Alman, I'm saying there's something shlila sachiyuv. It's not the world. God is not the world. He's not finite. He's infinite, and therefore the whole world is infinite. That's very, very beautiful. It's amazing. We shouldn't think that we're minimizing here madregas. This is the death of ego. It's pretty good. Huh? Infinite, not finite. And the reason is the best words are words of shlila sachiyuv. Those are the best words. Fakert, here there could be individuality. Here there could be individuality. You could blow, could God be individual? So you could also be an individual. This is two levels in Geula. The first level is also Geula. The second level is Geula, where we realize our infinity. I'm infinite. My ego is it's nothing. It doesn't even exist. You don't need it to exist. It doesn't exist. And then there's something even deeper, and that's the fusion of everything. Everything could come back. The you could come fully back. The moment it's not you. It's not you. So what is it? It could be you too. Minafshekara. You're a conduit for the ultimate truth. And if Hashem wants you should blow. Gesundheit. Take your hands and take your mouth and take your brain and blow. I'm not afraid of your brain. We don't have to negate seichel. We don't have to negate anything. But this is post bittul. This is post bittul, not pre bittul. Your typhus. Take a look at the last paragraph on 708. Gama oida lekisha mezgala b'yem shabbes b'chinas halakus shalamaylam b'chinas ha'olam shaydei nasa bittul v'aliyas ha'olam ad l'b'chinas atzilus harei mizeh gufa sheshavas mekal malachta shlilas ha'bittul ha'olam muchach shedar gezu shayeches legidrei ha'olam. He rested from his work. He abstained. He negated his work. He went up back to infinity. This means it's a madrega that's somehow connected to the realm of olam. Afilu habitul de chachma atzilus hu ba'ofen shehu levadehu ve'ein zulasai. Even atzilus, it's the bittul of he himself is he ve'ein zulasai. There's nobody outside of him. The word einoid malvade, what does it mean? There's nobody outside of him. You hear again? There's nobody outside of him. What are you saying? You're defining Hashem and you're saying it's pure oneness. What does it mean, oneness? There's nothing else. Those words seem like the best words. He says no. It's defined by there's nothing else. So who's really defining him? Everybody else. You understand? It's a vocabulary of separateness. I want to describe what Eid Mulvadi means. So what do I say? There's nobody outside of him. So how did I describe him? Through nobody. through eliminating everybody else. In other words, everybody else described him. Without everybody else, I can't describe Hashem. The Rebbe says, you're still stuck. You're busy negating everybody else. Now you have to know, it's very subtle this, because Einoid Mulvade means Einoid Mulvade. Einoid Mulvade means there's nothing outside of him. So what are you making pshat lachem? But in life, it has tremendous ramifications. Because this means in the ultimate nekuda of Achdus, there's nothing that can't join along. Nothing has to be avoided. Ein oid mulvade, ein zulasa, he says, is shlilas hametzias. V'at shegam ein soif hu toyar sheshoylel soif. The expression that's everywhere in Kabbalah and Chassidus, ein soif, the best expression in the world. What's better? Ein soif, infinite. It's a description that negates soif. Ein soif. Shemoida al shaychusay legidri hametzias manu makim. So Saf Kol Saf, it means there's some relatability to the realm of Saif, of space, of time. I know it's beyond space and beyond time. When I say beyond space and beyond time, what am I doing? Time and space are defining you by saying you're beyond space and time. There's something called beyond being beyond space and time. And then you could be in space and in time too. You're beyond being beyond space and time. Our definitions of infinity come from tension still. They still come from tension. So even our definition of bittul as the death of ego, the death of anything, is coming from the fact that the ego is trying to liberate itself from ego. It's still holding on. The infinity is still holding on to something. Even death of ego. It's a very necessary step, because you're not going to get to the third step without the second step. Because if I jump to the third step without the second step, then I'm just, I'm Moed B'Malchus, exactly, and I'm circumventing my fear of letting go of my brokenness. Just like I can't get to the second step without working through the first step, because it's not going to be real. You have different parts of yourself. So everything has its very, very important place in life. But in that third space, there's no contradiction. Dveikus doesn't have to look like Dveikus. Dveikus doesn't mean I have closed eyes. I'm in a state of transcendental bliss. Dveikus could be very grounded. In fact, I take a shofar and I blow.
That's the real Dveikus.
That's
That
It doesn't have to look like Dveikus. It doesn't have to look like aloofness. You do what you have to do, exactly. You do what you have to do. It becomes very simple. The Baal Shem Tov said, the pshitis von ayish pashet, riton pshitis ha'atzmus. Right? The simplicity of the simple Jew touches the simplicity of the essence. He was saying the simplest thing, but he was also saying the deepest thing. But what made it so deep is that it was very simple. What we're learning here is that the deepest things are the most simple things. It's very simple. Hashem wants you to do it, so do it. Why are you making it so complicated? Like, you know, when you come to the top of the mountain, you go back to the simplicity. Why are you making it so complicated? He said you should blow shofar, so blow shofar. No, I'm blowing. You're not blowing. He said you should blow shofar. You're blowing. Don't ask questions to give answers. You created an ego, you created self-consciousness, now you're busy fighting self-consciousness, now you're busy killing self-consciousness, now you're celebrating the death of self-consciousness. Self-consciousness never existed, that you have to celebrate the death of self-consciousness. We're not afraid of you. You were never separate, that we're afraid of you being separate, so you have to die in order to become one. You're good.
So I just had a definition of Beis Hamikdash.
Yeah.
Rabbi, can I share? It's the place where there's no trauma.
Yeah.
That's the only place where there's no trauma, right? So you don't need to be afraid of definitions of others, of you in a way. There's no anxieties of wrong definitions.
There's no description, not even a description to negate description. That's the point. Bittul, the second level of bittul, is blissful. But its definition is that it negates description. It negates any form of separateness, because there's oneness. So of course I don't blow. You're just like in a state of silence.
When the Maggid says Eis HaShamayim, it excludes the Beis Hamikdash B'chlal. It's like...
Oh, very good. So he's going to say. Let's see. Very good. Good question. Ulamailam is beyond Ein Sof, beyond Ein Zulasoi, beyond Ein Oed Mulvadoi. Lamaila gami geder de Milo mata. You see what he just did in parentheses? He's saying above this. The moment he said above this, we're back to the stuck. That's why he said, I'm just using Lamaila. I'm saying higher than Ein Sof. No, it's not higher than Ein Sof. Because the moment you say higher than Ein Sof, what are you saying? It's not stuck by Ein Sof. Back to square one. So you see what this is? Ulamailam is. I remember when the Rebbe said this. He said noch hecher, and then he corrected himself. Un hecher fun mailo mat. Another. I don't mean lamailam mizeh as the next level. I'm not talking about that. I mean lamailam is beyond the definition of higher and lower. There's no next level. You know why? Because why is there a next level? The low level is not low. You don't have to run away from anything, you understand? It's a place where Maila and Mata are not Teufus Mokin. Muhusei v'atzmusei yizbarach shalamayla mikol toya v'geder. The pure essence of Hashem that's beyond description, beyond realm, chuli, etc. Shlilas hachiyuv or shlilas hashlila. It negates the positive, but then it also negates the fact that you have to negate the positive. It negates the positive, and then it negates the negative. The fact that I have to negate the positive and say you're not this, that itself has to be negated. It's called shlilas hachiyuv or shlilas hashlila. And when you say shlilas hachiyuv or shlilas hashlila, so there's nothing you have to negate. Remember, two negatives is a positive, so everything could be there. But it's not there because it's defined as something separate. It's there because there's no definition that you have to hold on to, not even oneness, transcendence, aloofness, sublimity, infinity, unlimitedness, and all the beautiful words we always use in our classes. Mendel, du bist Teufels. Du bist Teufels. Es kann sein, du.
So it is what it is. Basically, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Cigar is sometimes only a cigar.
So it's a
complete revelation of Atzmos. Atzmos. There's no self-consciousness that's a threat that I have to be busy negating it. Finiteness is not a threat. Limitations, definitions. So it all comes together. That's why we always, that's the struggle. Yeah. His father's son.
It's an elimination of trauma by definition.
No, he's saying that till you get to that point, you're in a place of trauma. You're traumatized by gvul. You're traumatized by finiteness. He's saying that itself is not an...
That's very limiting to who your essence is.
You're right. But over here, the eye is not an issue because the eye is just a conduit. It's a manifestation. That's what he says. Hashem says a mitzvah in the Torah to blow. So he blows. Favos nicht. It's not amblo. Benafshikar. It's a blastich. It's a blastich. Mitzias is also a blastich. It's like Hashem's mitzias, so to speak. Manifested through the human. Because you're you take a one. When we say here one, it's not like we said one before. We said one is that you left your identity and you became one. So of course there's no identity. So how could you blow shofar? It has to be an experience of awe, of reverence. And that's Shabbos. That's why Shabbos is a special day. There's no dibur, there's no malacha. You're abstaining from something. And that's what makes you a keli, or it puts you in that experience. Of course.
He was higher than
What's the problem with missing the boat?
Yeah. Tkiyah shofar is a mitzvah. So it's the Beis HaMikdash, they blew. What are you making me issues with? What's the issues? The deepest dveikus could sometimes look like the exact opposite of dveikus. Because there's no friction whatsoever. There's not even the friction of ego. But this can only happen after the bittul of the second level. Because if not, I wasn't ready to let go. I was still stuck, and then I'm just reducing infinity to my own stuff. We're not talking about that. So it's a process. It's not, just like we don't say, every Rosh Hashanah don't blow. No, every Rosh Hashanah blow. It's not always Shabbos. On Sunday, you're not supposed to behave like it's Shabbos, right? The Gemara says, Goy sheshavas chayiv misa. Right? A non-Jew who's Shabbos, chayiv misa. When the Rabbi used to say over this Gemara, he used to say it, the Rabbi didn't like the words chayiv misa. He used to say like this, Goy sheshavas, it does hepech zayin mitzias. The Gemara says, a Goy who's Shabbos is chayiv misa if he keeps Shabbos. So you say like, a Goy who keeps Shabbos, it runs contrary to his reality. Chayiv misa doesn't mean, we're going to kill you. Chayiv misa means you're forfeiting your lifeline. You're killing yourself. Chayiv misa is just, Bezdin is just going to play it out. Like Mischai ben you cut yourself off from your chiyus. You cut yourself off. There's certain things you do, boom, it runs against your reality. I'm not going to eat for 9. The Gemara says, right, you make a shvua, you're not going to sleep for 3 days straight. So what does he say? Malkin, you give him malchus and goes, send him straight to bed. It's hepech mitzias. Why? Because Shabbos is not. Why are you not doing anything? Go work. It's not good not to work. Doesn't help people not to work. Go work.
So this Maimon, we can only understand Shabbos.
So when
You can understand it always, experience. And then there's Hashanah Shechalei b'Shabbos. There's Hashanah the Beis Hamikdash.
How does this crown Hashem?
It's the greatest coronation. The greatest coronation is the coronation that says Yisrael v'Kudsha Bricha Kul Echad. It's mamish one. What does it mean mamish one? Why am I saying mamish? We don't realize, we don't have vocabulary without negation. This is one of the foundations of linguistics. We don't realize this. We cannot have language when we don't negate. Every word makes sense because it negates something else. There's no other, we don't have language that doesn't negate. Kukuriku a little bit. You understand? The more that, and you know what, you want to know something? What's called better definitions is that it negates more accurately. It's with precision, it's meticulous. But it's all about negation. So when we talk about God, it's of course about negation. Even sophisticated conversation about Hashem. The most sophisticated conversation about reality, spirituality, transcendence. It's always in language of physics today, quantum mechanics. How do they talk about it? Always in negation of previous science, of other definitions. You'll say it goes clockwise and counterclockwise simultaneously. Just an example. What are you saying? The limitations of space, of time, don't exist. That's how we talk. That's the only way we can talk. Because that's how we can grab onto it. We grab onto it by saying, oh, it's not this. Okay, oh, so it's not this, so now I know who you are. No, you don't know who I am. A little bit I know who you are. You're not him. There's a song, right? The only thing we know about Johnny is that his name wasn't Johnny. The only thing I know about you is that I don't know you. Okay, but that also I know you. If I don't know you, I know something about you. And then there's maybe I do know you, maybe I could know you. Why can't I know you? The Melech here is not above. He's not detached. He's not. Yeah, it's so one. You don't have to negate the opposite of oneness. You don't have to negate the opposite of oneness. You negate the opposite of oneness if it's not completely one. If it's not completely one, right? So you negate the opposite of oneness because there's a friction there. But he says in the real achdus with Hashem beyond Metzias. So your Metzias is not a contradiction. In the real Achdus with Hashem, who's completely beyond Metzias, even beyond negation of Metzias, your Metzias is not any contradiction. It's completely integrated. Dveikus doesn't have to look like anything. I don't mind if you do. You could be present, you can have your eyes open, you could smile, you could tell me good morning, and you could blow shofar, and we're good. That's complete fusion, real fusion. There's a story about the Alter Rebbe, right? That the night of Kol Nidre, he was in Liozna. The night of Kol Nidre, he was in the middle of davening, the talus and the kittel. In the middle of davening, he took off his talus, he took off his kittel, and he left shul. They later found out that at the edge of town, there was a woman who gave birth. She was a Kimpeton, she had a baby, and the whole family went to daven Yom Kippur. Everybody wants to be by Kol Nidre. So she was alone. And she was not doing well. She was sick. And she was hungry and starving, and the baby was starving. He didn't have milk. So the story is that Alter Rebbe went and he chopped wood on Yom Kippur. And he made a fire, and he ignited the fire, and he cooked up a yoichala, a soup. And he fed her. And she could feed the baby, and then he went back to shul. The whole family was gone when he did it. Why they left? I don't know. They left.
Because I mentioned family comes back and they're like, what like the Rebbe?
So the Rebbe once told over the story, the Lubavitcher once told over the story, and he said, L'chayra, what's the pella? There's a din pikuach nefesh, is deicha kol ha'torah kula. And the Gemara says, mitzvah begadol. It's a mitzvah that the greatest person should do it, so people shouldn't think you send children, you send people who are not mechuyev, because then next time there won't be a child and the person could chas v'shalom die. So mitzvah begadol, he went himself. So he says the pella of the mice is there's imitten kol nidre with his talis and kittel yom kippurs yichidish benefesh hated their filth. There was no WhatsApp, there was no hatzala in liaj. Hated their filth. He felt that this woman needs soup. Das is the inyan. In place of dveikas, right? In place of dveikas, the death of ego. If you explain that, where do you have a shaykhs telamazah? But that's all when the dveikas has a name. It's called dveikas. When it doesn't have a name, it doesn't. You do what you have to do. In that place of oneness with atzmos mamish, there's a woman who needs soup. Her child needs milk, and she's cold. She needs a fire. So go and light a fire. Mm-hmm. Let's finish 2 paragraphs here. Ulamayla is and again, he doesn't like the word lamayla. Lamayla migeder milo mata. The word lamayla is already nishgut, and nishgut is eich nishgut. Mohusev atzmus is bar shalamayla mekol toyev v'geder shlilas achiv v'shlilas l'shel. Shegilu izah nasa b'mikdash. K'ma shekasov hashamayim u'shmei hashamayim lo yichalkalucha af ki abayis azeh b'nichusa. When Shlomo built the Beis HaMikdash, he said, heaven can't contain you. Heaven of heaven can't contain you. But this house will contain you. But he was also saying b'nichusa, this house will contain you. So here we have the taich. Hashamayim is the first level of bittul. Shmei Hashamayim is the second level of bittul. Habayis hazeh is the third, atzmos. Shamayim is heaven. You look up to heaven. So I should strip myself from my indulgence with ego and ascend. That's bittul. Shmei Hashamayim is the heaven of heaven. It's lagabe, the infinity of Ein Sof, what we call Soivav. Over there, there's no bittul. Why? Because there's no mitzias to be mavatal. It's bottle. And then there's habayis hazeh. In this house, which is a very limited house. Beis HaMikdash has measurements, the Makamar, and everything had measurements. It's very finite. And here he says, V'shachanti b'soichem. Heaven not. Here. Afke habayis hazeh. Here they can blow shofar. On Rosh Hashanah, Shechali is b'Shabbos. V'lechein b'mikdash hayu toikin gam b'Rosh Hashanah shechal b'Shabbos ki mitzad b'husei v'atzmusi yizbarach shalamayla mikol toyer v'geder shezen izgala b'mikdash ein hechrech b'shlilus hametzias. Mitzad the real essence, there's no need to negate any identity, any reality, even finite reality. Why liyoisei gam shlilas hashlila? Because he's negated from negation as well. Shlilas hashlila. Not. Even not is not appropriate. Va'adarabah. Allah b'ritzoyin elim l'chaloilam. He wants a world. He wanted to be a king over the world. Allah b'ritzoyin elim l'chaloilam. I want you. Va'allah b'ritzoyin shachtarati ayde pula v'asiyadet ki yeshayfer dafke. And he wanted that the coronation should be through an action of blowing shofar, precisely that. Adarabah. So why are you negating? Why are you negating that? The negation of that is in an experience where Metzias is a stira to higher than Metzias. Metzius is identity, reality, existence. Hashem is beyond Metzius. He's shlilas ha-Metzius. So when one experiences that, there's no Metzius. But that's because you're experiencing shlilas ha-Metzius. When you go to shlilas ha-Metzius, so you can go back to Metzius. You can go back to a very fine way, take a shofar and coronate. And do what you have to do. I'm doing it. Over here, it's not I'm doing it anymore. I'm a pure conduit. It's minafshei kara. This is even deeper than bittul. You don't need bittul ha-Metzius. Bittul ha-Metzius you need because Metzius uncovered the truth. That truth is higher than Metzius. So I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize. Boom, you let go. But when you're shoylel the shlilas ha-Metzius, when you negate the negation of Metzius, you can go back to Metzius. So that's the chiddush of the Beis HaMikdash. That's the chiddush. Not enough for you. He says ba'omek yos. He goes a little deeper. But I want to finish here. One nakud. There'll be mamash another 4-5 minutes. Seif Yud Aleph. Seif Yud Aleph, page 711. 711. Now the Sikha goes into the difference of mitzvahs and Torah. There's the way shofar is in as a mitzvah, the way shofar is in Torah. The main thing with the Beis HaMikdash was Torah. The idea of mitzvahs is basically Hashem says, I want you to do. The idea of Torah is his desire, and the person is a conduit for his desire. So that's what he's masbeh. And then he's masbeh the shaykhs to Parshas Nitzavim, which was before the Hashanah. But Seif Yud Aleph is a very important conclusion. There's an important thing. This is very, very crucial. Shegam k'shaloimdim u'mizboinenim be'inyanim hachi nailam ke'inyan anal she'enay afilu begeder shel inyan naila kiyim l'mayla mikol geder v'toyer tzrichim leida sha'amaisa hu ha'ikr. Some people learn these things, it's pure philosophy. He says it's not the way it's supposed to be. Even when you learn about such lofty things, the main thing is what's the relevance to a person's life. He says even when you're learning such lofty ideas, and then he says she'enei afilu begeder shel inyan naila. Really, it's not a lofty idea. You understand? Because the moment you say it's a lofty idea, he says it's not even an inyan naila. Don't call it an inyan naila. It's really very lofty, but he says that's not the right word. It's not lofty. Because when you say lofty, what does lofty mean? It's on the loft. It's the ego saying, get out of the ego, go up. It's lofty, it's exalted, it's big. He said it's not big, maybe it's small too. It doesn't have to be big. Big means, I'm not small, I'm a big guy, I'm not small. So it means I'm defined by smallness. Naila is defined by not Naila, right? The upper floor is not the lower floor. But this is not the upper floor. Because it's not defined by not being low. So therefore it could be low too. But he says, if in everything in Torah we say the main thing is action, certainly if you're talking about the deepest of the deep, and you can't even call it deep, for sure, it needs to translate into a person's life. So the question is, where does this have relevance? He says, one of the lessons of this in a person's life is a person ought to try to cultivate, and again he says every person differently, because this is not something you just impose. Every person has to find it according to their own sheer, their own measurement, their own who they are. The avoid of a person should be without hargashas hametzias shaloi, means without the feeling his own metzias, the self-consciousness of it. Hainu she'ein ze ba'ofen shehu loy metayro mekayim mitzvahs. It's not I'm learning, I'm doing it. Kiyim ba'ofen de menafshei kara. Your soul kneels on its own. Hainu shekiyim atayro v'mitzvahs nasa kemoy mei elav, like it's happening on its own. L'loy hametzias shaloi, without the self-consciousness, without my mitzvahs. But also not, even till the point it's also not negating mitzvahs. Like, I'm not self-conscious. It's because you pashat one. A vivid example you see in tzedakah, mitzvah klalos, which is a general mitzvah. Shenesinas tzedakah b'ofen shloi nirgash etzlei shu anoisen. Ela shepulas tzedakah nasis k'mei ma'ela she'ein mitzias shel noisen ki mitzvah tzedakah. Interesting example. When you give tzedakah, he says, there's a giver and there's a taker. Can a person give tzedakah in a way that it shouldn't be felt that I'm giving and you're taking? It's almost like the tzedakah is being done on its own. There's a mitzvah of tzedakah, and the mitzvah of tzedakah is happening. I happen to be the conduit through which it's happening, but there's no sense of separateness. Why does he use this example? Because this is where it becomes the most important. Right? Tzedakah in money or tzedakah in other forms. The greatest form of help you can give somebody is when there's true sense that you're not the taker and I'm not the giver. I'm the giver, even if I'm a nice guy and I'm a gentle guy and I'm a sensitive guy. But ultimately, it's difficult. It's difficult for the recipient. But when the person can really go into a place, it's like when they blew in the Beis HaMikdash, it was benafshikar. Almost Hashem is blowing. The mitzvah of tzedakah needs to be accomplished in the world. This is the place. It happens to be. I'm the right person in the right place. Nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me because I'm busy with me, not me. That also not. It's not ego and it's not ego. Shlilas ego is also ego. He says, the point is, also generally in Torah mitzvahs, when a person goes into a place where I become a complete conduit for Hashem, for the mitzvah should be done. The mitzvah should be done. He says, that's a truly liberated place. Yisrael v'kodesh kol echad. The Jew and Hashem is one. So b'meila, Hashem's mitzvahs happen through me. That's what Hashem's mitzvahs happen through me. That's where it becomes a very real thing in a person's life. So there's absolutely no ego. Me, what this is, I'm busy with myself, or I'm not busy with myself, or I'm frustrated with myself. Frustrated with myself is weiter. I'm frustrated by self. So what am I reaching? I'm reaching a place that's not busy with self. Even if I could reach it, which is also not so simple. Maybe you need some help. But what did I get? I got out of the self. The real place is you don't have to get out of the self. The whole self is selfless. The self is selfless. And the selfless is the self. Because selfless means not self. Oh, not good. You don't have to be not self. Selfless is not self. You can be self also. Because when you go to a place beyond self and selflessness, you don't have to be selfless. You can be the self too. That is the self. The self is a conduit for Hashem. Hashem gave a mitzvah of tzedakah, so you do the mitzvah of tzedakah. It's not even me doing the mitzvah of tzedakah. That's the feeling. Okay, everybody have a wonderful day. A good gebench yar, a ksiva v'achsim toiva, Hashanah toiva m'sukkah to you, your families, your loved ones, but to Klal Yisrael. It should be a year in which we should be able to experience and internalize bittul number 1, bittul number 2, bittul number 3, which is really not bittul, not even the word bittul, and to be able to radiate it to ourselves and to everybody around us and to the whole world. A year of geula, and a year of bracha v'atzlacha ad b'li dai for everybody, with nachas, health, happiness, prosperity.
Can we take this?
We could take this, yeah.
From Mendel.